Hey, what's going on, everybody? James here, and we are back with another watch collecting topic. And today in the video, we're going to be talking about what is your watch collecting philosophy? And I love philosophy. This is a really deep topic because philosophy deals with everything. But today we're going to be talking specifically about watches and how you can think about your collection. So if this is your first time stopping by the channel, thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. Do please like the video if you enjoy this kind of stuff, and subscribe to the channel because I do post weekly, so you'll see an update from me pretty much every week with different topics, different ideas. And my channel is all about getting out of watches what you want to get out of watches. Not here to sell you anything. I want you to know and love the watches that you have so that you can be a satisfied collector. So with that in mind, let's get into the video. So what's your watch collecting philosophy? Well, I think the first thing you've got to think about when it comes to this topic is your budget, because your budget is going to be your biggest constraint when it comes to watch collecting. Obviously, if you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a luxury watch, you're probably not going to be looking at Patek Philippe because it's just going to be out of your price range. And there is nothing wrong with that. I want to make a big emphasis on that. There's nothing wrong with that. No one says that you have to have a Patek or a Rolex or an Omega. No one says that you've got to do those things. It's really up to you. And I've found watches at very moderate price points within, the couple $1,000 range that I really, really like. And I've found watches that are far beyond what I could afford in quite a few years. So you got to keep that in mind. It should never be at the expense of your long-term financial goals when you're thinking about purchasing a watch. This should be something that, again, depending on what you like, depending on some of the other topics we're going to get into, it should be something that you can get in a reasonable amount of time, and that's going to look different for everybody. So for some people, that's a couple months. For some people, it might be a couple of years, because let's be honest, no one needs a watch. Nobody needs one. This is a fun hobby. It's a way of self-expression. It's a way of, having conversation pieces with other collectors. It's just a way of personal enjoyment. And that's really important when it comes to your watch collecting philosophy. So budget is the first thing. Next, let's talk about the use case. Have a reason to own it. Don't just buy it because it looks pretty. Don't just buy it because it's popular or it's talked about or anything like that. Have a reason to own it. Don't buy the same watch over and over. I've got 3 on the table here. So on the left, I've got my Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Ultra Thin Perpetual Enamel, more of a dressy watch, right? In the middle, I have my Rolex Skydweller, which is an awesome, awesome annual calendar and travel watch, and kind of a great daily, honestly, too. And then on the right, I've got my Omega Seamaster Ploprof 1200 meter in summer blue, and this thing is an absolute tank. Obviously, it's a professional diving watch. I'm not a diver, but point being, I have different use cases for each of these 3 watches, and that's what I'm saying. I don't own a whole bunch of the same exact watch because, once again, going back to budget, I just don't have the budget for that, quite frankly, and I think it's a little bit boring. Now, you can't disagree with the fact that, like I said, watches there's an element of self-expression in watches. You may have certain outfits that you want to have watch options with, and I think that is totally fine. The thing that I'm talking about here, as applies to my thought process and my philosophy on this, is, again, if you know your budget is limited, you might as well get your money's worth in building out a broad variety of a collection, and we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. So again, use case. Have a reason to own this thing. Have a dress watch. Have a daily or a travel watch. Have a little bit more of a, not necessarily a beater if you want to call it that, but have something that's a little bit more rugged. Definitely some water resistance. You're not afraid to, do some outside yard work or various things like that, right? That's what you want to go for, is having some variety. Don't buy the same watch over and over. I just think that's boring. So that's my take on the use case portion of it. Third thing, brand. We got to talk about brand because it is relevant. And obviously here on the table, I've got 3 pretty well-known brands, but there's different associations for all of these with me. I grew up watching sports, And I was a huge fan of, honestly, it was tennis and golf for the most part. And so, growing up, Rolex did have some associations for me. And at the time, of course, I couldn't afford to buy something like this. But then as I got older, got into a professional career, right, the brand had an association for me, and it was positive because I looked up to some of those athletes that I knew as a kid. And so when I started to look at luxury watches, I've talked in other episodes and my podcast, which is just coming out, about my journey from Fossil to Rolex. But realistically, I didn't know Rolex at first. It was kind of like on the periphery for me because it was out of my price range. It's the exact same first point that I made about budget. But as I got into it, there was a personal connection here. Jaeger LeCoultre, same kind of thing. Took a trip several years ago and just kind of stumbled into the brand, honestly. But when I saw it, I immediately liked it. I immediately liked the design language that they use. And that over time led me to ending up with, a watch like this from JLC, which is just spectacular and hard to beat, honestly. And same thing with Omega. Again, I've been into sports quite a bit. They obviously have ties to the Olympics. They've been like the official timekeeper of the Olympics for several years. So there are connections that I have to these brands. And sure, you might say, well, okay, but aren't those just the popular brands? Yeah, but it's about what makes them popular. It's not just because other people like them. It's no, the things that I'm interested in, the passions that I have tie into these brands, and that's why I like the brands. It's not just a matter of, well, what is everybody else buying and that type of thing. That's a little bit more hype, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So again, brand does matter. Find the ones that matter to you and go after those. The last one we're going to talk about is design. So when it comes to your watch collecting philosophy, again, this is a matter of self-expression. And the question would be, what are you looking to express in having these pieces? Now, a lot of people will say, especially Rolex gets a lot of hate, right? Because it's such a well-known brand. And so people say things like, well, you buy Rolex to impress other people, and you buy a insert, kind of obscure independent brand here to impress yourself. People say that stuff all the time. Personally, I think it's a little bit ignorant because the reality is Rolex is a great brand. They make excellent watches. The tolerances are super tight. There's still nothing like the feeling of a bracelet Rolex on the wrist. It just feels unlike any watch that I've tried on. I'm sure there are others that have good bracelets and those sorts of things. I'm not knocking any brands that way, but the quality, the tolerances, the accuracy even of Rolex is pretty incredible for the size of the brand, and it's pretty incredible for what they do. So, don't hate on, don't be one of the Rolex haters. There's a lot of them out there. I am definitely an advocate for the brand. And so again, what are you trying to express with the design? To me, this watch came down to a couple of things. It had a ring in the center of it. I've talked in my podcast about how that element of design was something that was interesting to me for a long, long time, even before I was into luxury watches. The fluted bezel, the blue dial, the clean modern look, just all the functionality that came with it, all were really relevant for me in terms of the design aesthetics, and I really, really like it. The JLC, a very different watch than the Rolex, but in a lot of ways, some similar elements, right? Harmonious and symmetrical dial design, color, obviously, you can see there's a theme here, a different shade of blue, different functionality, perpetual calendar versus an annual calendar, like on the Rolex, and a very different style, right? I mean, we're talking about a thinner precious metal dress watch here. Definitely not that kind of day-to-day wear type of piece. And the artistry in the JLC, right? Because I appreciate that in a watch. There's a little nod to the traditional crafts of watchmaking, of course, with the guilloche styles that there are two on here. You have the radio guilloche, and then you have the hobnail guilloche that's inside the perpetual calendar sub-registers. And the enamel, and again, another traditional watchmaking art craft that you will find in some brands. So different elements of expression there. And then you have the Omega. And of course, I have some others in the collection, but I'm just using these three for examples here. The Omega, very, very different design aesthetic. just huge, but still compact enough that it fits on my wrist quite well. And so for something like this, again, it's a little more casual, a little sportier than the other two, and a very different design even from the Rolex. Here you just have a simple 3-hand watch, which it's the only one in my collection that doesn't have any other additional complications, but actually really useful with this little timing bezel that you have on the Ploprof. So, you take the top of the bezel, you line it up with your minute hand, which is that cool sword looking hand in there, and then you get elapsed time. So still functional depending on what you are needing the watch for. So those are the 4 things that I believe can help you build a strong philosophy when it comes to watch collecting. So again, what's in your budget? What can you afford to buy? Stick with that. Don't compromise on your long-term financial goals just to buy a watch. What's your use case? Make sure it's got a use case in your day-to-day life. Have a reason to own it. Don't just buy it because it looks pretty. Get the brands that you like and that you have a positive association to. It's going to have a meaningful connection to you, and that does matter. And then lastly, does the design. What are you trying to express with it? Shoot for some variety here. Don't buy the same watch over and over, and enjoy the watches that you have. So thanks again for staying and hanging out and talking about watch philosophy and how you collect, because I do think it's relevant, and I do think it's important to be planful as you go forward, knowing again that you probably have limited resources like we all do, and that's why we have to make decisions about which watches we're going to own and which watches we don't. So thank you again. Please do like the video. Again, that helps me tremendously, and it helps me know that you like and enjoy what I'm doing. Comment the video and subscribe to the channel, because I do put content up every week and I do work hard to bring you value. So thanks again for stopping by. Again, my goal for you is that you get out of watches whatever it is that you want to get out of watches, so that you can know and love the watches you have and become a satisfied watch collector. Thanks again for stopping by. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.